Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Au. I'm one of the board members of the ISCPH. The state series is something that Melanie and I kind of thunk up. Every month we will go through, we will kind of interview a pharmacist in a state that has a medical cannabis program. As everyone knows or should know, every medical program in every state is very unique as far as program limitations, regulations, testing requirements, product availability, and general role of the pharmacist will vary as well. So here today with us is Brian Essenter. Is that how you pronounce it?
Well done.
All right, I'll let you take the floor. It will be open into questions, depending on how many people kind of sign in later. This is more of a free flow discussion than anything else. You know, we're here to support each other. This industry is still very small, still very new. So any information that we can get out there will be beneficial to the larger population. So take it away, Brian.
All right, thanks a lot, Alan. Appreciate it. And if there's any questions that you have or anybody has during the middle, please stop me and ask, because I mean, this is something that, as we've seen with every state, is a little bit particular, we'll say. So we're going to go through Connecticut and a little bit about our program, but just a little bit about me. I am a pharmacist. I graduated from Northeastern University in 2001. I worked for Walgreens for about 16 years through Massachusetts, Nevada, and eventually settled here in Connecticut. And I ran into the medical marijuana program in Connecticut here through a friend of mine from Walgreens, actually, who introduced me to the people at Compassionate Care Center. And that's where I started managing the dispensary there for about 3 years. Left there to start my own business. And I found that there was a lot of patients that were looking for more information and to get some more information before they spent all the money to go into the dispensary before actually purchasing any products, and just see if it was even appropriate for them. So I've had that going for about 3 years now. And with that, I also was able to help with an application, and we were able to win an application for Affinity Health and Wellness in New Haven, Connecticut. We've been open for just a little over 1.5 years now that we've been running there. So, and if anybody has any questions at any point, my email is brian@affinityct.com. I'm happy to answer, correspond with anything I can to help out. So we'll just go through some of the processes here in Connecticut, the patient certification process, a bit of an overview of the program itself, what the role is of the pharmacist in the program, and some of the resources that we use pretty regularly for staying updated in Connecticut as to what's going on and what new stuff's coming. So in Connecticut, we have the Department of Consumer Protection is sort of our governing body, we'll say. They're the ones who wrote our regulations, do all of the patient certification, and sort of oversee everything for us. So the registration process for the patients, each patient, it's a $100 registration fee to the Department of Consumer Protection for your license, for your certification. Your certification lasts 1 year from the date approved by the DCP. That actually changed. Originally, they had it so that it was the date that you were certified by your doctor. Some people would take a month or 2 months or more before they would even go and put in their registration, because they needed to get the $100 and would lose that time and whatever time it took the state to approve their applications. So one of the other things is our patients here can only go to one dispensary at a time. We have a list of patients that are approved at our dispensary. If they are not on that list, then they cannot make a purchase at your dispensary at that time. They can transfer up to 4 times a year. It is a bit of a process. It can take up to 48 hours if they, fill out the form, fax it to DCP to get approval to transfer. But it happens. It's usually more patients being upset or, maybe a new dispensary opened a little closer to them, but there's not typically a lot of switching. We do not accept any out-of-state medical marijuana certifications at this time. I know there's a lot of other states that do, but as you'll see, we are very particular with all of our conditions and everything, and they don't feel comfortable allowing anybody else from another state who might not have a condition that they feel is appropriate here in Connecticut. So qualifying conditions. So this is kind of a little bit of where we started and a good idea of the overview of the program. You can see 2012 when the program started, we started with 11 conditions. And we had your typical, your cancer, glaucoma, HIV, Parkinson's, MS. One of the good ones we had for patients with pain was damage to the nervous tissue of the spinal cord with objective neurological indication of intractable spasticity. That's a mouthful, right? They obviously made these diagnoses and these conditions very, very narrow and made it a little difficult for the clinicians to certify anybody who wasn't very specifically lying in one of these conditions or already diagnosed. And then I highlighted the PTSD there because I think it kind of says a lot that is our only non-physical ailment or condition that we have that's approved. It's the only one that is sort of mental or just not a physical pain or issue that you're dealing with there. So I just always found that rather amusing. Some states have anxiety, some states have sleep and such too. We are not able to get any of that so far. But you can see that we did add some conditions in 2016 as well, including the sickle cell, post-laminectomy. We even got psoriatic arthritis and ALS, ulcerative colitis, complex regional pain syndrome. That was a big one, CP, and cystic fibrosis as well. So obviously quite the list. But then we have page 2. So we have 38 conditions in the state of Connecticut. And I'm not going to go through all the rest of these, and I'll spare you guys that. But I highlighted some of the big ones that came in. 2018, we got spasticity or neuropathic pain associated with fibromyalgia. That was a really big one, along with rheumatoid arthritis and intractable headaches, which are migraines. That really opened up quite a bit for our patients there as well. They did include muscular dystrophy at that point. Chronic neuropathic pain and with degenerative spinal disorders. So that came in 2019. That was a bigger one as well. And then we had the intractable neuropathic pain that is unresponsive to standard medical treatments as well. So that kind of opened up things. But then just this past year, we finally got chronic pain approved. And you can see all the other ones that are in there are very, very specific again. But with the chronic pain, we're really hoping that the only other condition that gets approved at this point is at the clinician's discretion. And I'll show you the process we go through here with that in just a minute. But we do have a program for children as well, anybody under 18 years old. Some of the little idiosyncrasies with children are they have to have 2 certifying practitioners. One of them must be a pediatrician. So not only do they have to have a diagnosis, but they also have to have 2 separate doctors willing to certify them, which was one of the ways for the DCP to be comfortable for not having just your quote unquote pot docs that are certifying kids because parents just want them to be for one reason or another. But you can see here our list is a little bit smaller for children. The terminal illness, end of life care, that was actually one that was approved for children before it was approved for adults. And we said, how can you have that for kids, but not for adults? And they said, oh yeah, let's fix that. So, but we do have quite a few children that we've had certified that have had very good luck in our program as well. So your certifying providers, doctors and APRNs can certify patients. The clinicians do have to register with the state of Connecticut through a BizNet portal. It's a 15-minute process, but that is literally all it takes for them to do that. They do have to have a DEA number because that is part of what's required for them, but it is 15, 20-minute process. So any clinician in our state that says they cannot just means that they are not willing to certify patients. Clinicians over just this past few months with COVID are now allowed to use telehealth to certify patients as well. So that's something that's really helping grow our patient base and everything. But one of our roadblocks here is the cost of the clinician visit is anywhere from $100 to $300. Plus, as we mentioned, the $100 to the Department of Consumer Protection. So that's anywhere from $200 to $400 that a patient might be out of pocket before they even walk in the door to actually to speak with one of us and go over their condition and whether it would be appropriate or how we can help them, how expensive it might be, any of those kind of things too. Some of the products that we have quite a wide array of products available in our program, actually. We do have flour, we have your tinctures, vape oils, concentrates. The tinctures, we have tinctures and oral solutions. Tinctures are your ethyl alcohol based, and then your oral solutions are usually your MCT oil or coconut oil. We have your THC only, CBD only, THC and CBD ratios, that are quite a wide range there too. Concentrates, including your waxes, shatters, crumbles. We do have RSO or FICO. We have other, they'll call it full spectrum oil as well too. Your edibles, we have tablets and capsules, brownies and cookies, honey. We do not have any gummies or candies, and everybody's always curious about that. It's just that they're too kid friendly is what the DCP told us. Our question is always, well, I don't know a kid that doesn't like a cookie or a brownie, but we don't have that argument because we won't have any more cookies or brownies. You will see below the CBD THC combos that we have there, some CBN, CBG, and some Delta 8 THC. So those are some products that we have available in our program. And I just kind of put a few of the labels that we have and give you a bit of an idea of what it looks like for our patients. But in the upper left there, you can see that there's our CBN tablets. So it's just CBN. It's an isolate there that we have for that. Those are actually unbelievable. I'm a patient here in Connecticut, and I have used them many times to help sleep with some back pain and everything through the night for sure. Underneath that, you can see that we have the Delta 8 distillate. So that's just a Delta 8 THC that's in there. There is a little bit of Delta 9 THC as well, but that's almost all Delta 8 THC. In the middle, we got a couple of our random ones. We have some sublingual strips. I've been seeing those around a little bit more, but those are just like a Listerine strip. It goes right under the tongue. You can cut them in half, but we have them in sativas, indicas, CBD, CBD THC combos as well. And then we have some drink mixes, some pumpkin spice latte drink mix. So you just put that in a hot cup of water and you'll have yourself a pumpkin spice latte. We have hot chocolate mix as well. They have just a baking mix too. And there's a cider mix that they just came out with too for the fall. We have CBG oral drops as well. So just straight CBG, nothing else in those as well. And THCA, which is one of my favorite products that we carry. We have a couple of different producers that make THCA products, and we have had an immense amount of success with our patients with THCA and keeping that psychoactivity, that intoxicating effect down for them as well. So those just a bit of a snapshot of some of the interesting products we have here and how much they're really starting to spread out in Connecticut as well. As I'm sure many of you just noticed and got a little bit confused with the naming on some of those products that you just saw. So Connecticut requires the producers to rename every strain or product that they have. The names cannot be similar to any non-cannabis products, use any street or slang names that refer to marijuana, or is anything obscene or indecent. Some of the names that we have, one of the companies uses Indicol, Hybridol, and Sativerin for every single one of their flowers. If it's an indica, it's going to be Indicol A, B, C, to the point where they've gotten to BC, DE, FG, and all of that too. So that's a little confusing when you have to remember certain letter combinations and indicols for all of them and try to remember what strain is what. And they do the same thing with their hybridol and sativerins too. And you can see the rest of them. Some of them go with colors. Some of them go with just completely random words and names that mean absolutely nothing to anything. And then some of them you can see have a little bit of something to do with the medication itself and the genetic itself. So for instance, Eggbrid is early glue is the strain for Eggbrid. Brandica is your blackberry cheesecake. The Avengiva is Bruce Banner crossed with sour diesel. So that was an Avengers reference there. Ivory is your GMO. Sapphire is the reason that they make us rename our strains. Sapphire, the genetic name for Sapphire is Cherry Thunderfuck. So you can understand that that is why that they don't want us using that. It's not very medicinal or professional in any way. You're not going to have your grandmother or your older adults or anything being too excited to come in and say, I need that Cherry Thunderfuck, because they're not going to do it. So that's one of the big reasons they make us rename them. Scarlet, though, is Strawberry Cough. Borlax is one of my favorite ones. That's Northern Lights. So Borealis is the reference there. Lexican is Lemon Skunk. That's one of the original strains we've had in this program. And then Arachnidex is one of my favorite ones. That one's White Widow. So the arachnid is, the spider. And I thought that was a pretty cool little tweak they made on it. So they are trying to make some little advances so you have an idea as to what strain is what, but that's about the best we're getting right now. Which means we have patients that have websites that they use to decode every single one of these that are created by other patients who have access to these genetic names. So it means that patients have to go from our website to another website to get the genetic information, then to another website like a Leafly or an Allbud or something to get the strain information as well. So makes things a little difficult for the patients. One of the other fancy things that Connecticut requires is a, quote, new brand for any product that the THC, THCA, CBD, or CBDA change by more than 5%. So you can imagine that your CBDA at one point is, 1%. And the next time it comes in, it's 0.8%. And the time after that, it's 1.2%. It can change every single time, just that tiniest bit. And that's more than a 5% change from the previous time. So they were requiring that they had to use a brand new name for it now. So one of the things that we were actually able to do there with them is we were able to create an academy of dispensaries. So we have a bunch of pharmacists and dispensary managers that get together and try to work with our producers to improve the program, the labeling, the naming, and all of that. So one of the things that we had them do was include an NDC number, which is given by the state. So it doesn't have a full-on, NDC, but it's a state-given NDC number that is included in the name. So every time a new batch comes out, it has a new batch number, essentially. They call it the NDC. So that's what they use now, because we did have a time where they would, at one point call a strain, for instance, Ivory, and it might have been your GMO cookies. And the next time it comes out, because it had changed by more than 5%, they might call it, Indigo or something, because they had to give it a new name, and that's what they thought was best. That got super confusing for patients. So we started working with them and have made some pretty positive changes there. So at least there's more consistency now, and patients know that it's the same strain each time, at least. So the program at a snapshot, where it started, how it's going. So we were approved in 2012 by our state legislature. That's one of the big hurdles that we have, is everything in Connecticut has to go through our state legislature. We can't do anything by ballot or referendum. In 2014, we actually started with our sales. We had 2,500 patients at the time. Those patients that had been certified since 2012 were told to go ahead and obtain your cannabis on your own. We won't do or say anything about it. So 2014, they finally were able to start making purchases. We had about 45 providers that were signed on to certify patients. There were 4 producers to start, 6 dispensaries, and as we saw earlier, 11 conditions. Those 4 producers make everything. If there's edibles, tinctures, flour, anything, they come from one of those 4 producers. And where do we now? So, November 1st, we had about 48,000 patients. We have about 1,350 providers, still only 4 producers. We have 18 dispensaries now. They just doubled that amount back when we opened about a year and a half ago. We've increased to 38 conditions now for adults and 10 conditions for children. So, and I did mention in there too, the 18 dispensaries, we've had 14 of them that are now owned by multi-state operators through most of them through acquisition as opposed to actually winning the licenses. A couple of them won licenses, but not many of them were that way. And what's the role of the pharmacist? We pretty much are required to do everything. Pharmacist is required to be on site in order to dispense any medication whatsoever. We perform any intake consultations. We do any dispensing, recommendations, dosing, have those conversations with the patients directly ourselves. It's just like a pharmacy. It's a pharmacist working in the pharmacy model. We have to be the ones to check everything and make sure it's accurate before it leaves. And right now there's 18 dispensaries, so I think there's about 50 pharmacists in Connecticut that we have working between us, maybe a few more. But as of now, I believe I'm the only one who does private consulting for patients on top of that. And that's one of the things that I love about my dispensary is I'm allowed the time to consult with patients, whether or not they come to our dispensary. If they go to another one, I can work with them for that as well. Only requirement is that you have to have a good active Connecticut license, in order to get a dispensary license. If you don't have a license in good standing, well then, you can't work in a dispensary. Outside of pharmacists, the only other people that we have in the dispensary are pharm techs. You can have a receptionist up front, but if you want to work in the dispensary and touch any medication, you have to be a state certified pharmacy technician as well. So they really did mirror the pharmacy program in our medical marijuana program. We do have a research program that was set up from day one, which is pretty awesome. There was one other time that this had been used, and this is the only one that's currently running that was actually done, double-blind, placebo-controlled style study that they're doing right now, pardon me. And CT Pharma, who's one of our producers, is actually working with Yale University. This is a FDA-approved study that they're doing. And actually the patients are coming through our dispensary too, because we're located right in New Haven around the corner. So it's been really awesome participating with Yale in the study and how everything's working and getting to see that firsthand as well. That's probably one of the most exciting things is that, the study is using medication that's coming from an actual dispensary, medication that patients could be purchasing as well. So, pretty awesome to participate in that and to see that they really are trying to make sure that this is done properly and medically. Some of the additional resources that we have in the program, the top line there, that's our DCP website. Those are going to be the guys that are going to give us all the information with all your regulations and everything too. They have all of your conditions, all of the updates, locations of all the dispensaries and whatnot too. Your e-regulations, that is where you can get the 110 pages of all the regulations here in Connecticut, including our advertising addendum as to what we're allowed to do with our advertisements and everything. The bottom two sites, those are our decoder sites that we use for our patients, terpstreet.com and dabin-dad.com. If you guys are a little curious as to what the names all really look like and how they decode and everything, those are a couple of really good sites that give some insight into what the Connecticut program looks like and everything too. I think that was about it. Some of the other things I just wanted to touch on a little bit real quick too was the testing that we have here in Connecticut is very, very strict as well. The heavy metals, mycotoxins, pesticides, all of that are tested to make sure that there's nothing in it to the strictest standards in the nation, as far as I'm aware at this point. The majority of products that are making it to the market in other states would not even be close to being allowed in ours. And all of that you could see is right on the labels and everything too. So any questions for me there, Alan?
Yeah, so we have a question from Colleen. So this was in reference to the slide that you had showed some of the products.
Yeah.
Is Delta 8 a legal loophole? So to kind of give our viewers a background on that, Delta 8 is available, online through the internet, as are certain other cannabinoids right now. It's a very unregulated market, but Brian, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it is. The funny part about that is THC is the only thing that is regulated, period. THCA is not regulated either. So, there are a lot of products that can have less than 0.3% THC, but they can have 7% THCA. And then once it's decarboxylated, it can convert to THC. But the Delta 8, yeah, I think it's a way. This is the government not keeping up with science at this point, I think, is the bottom line there. It's not quite as intoxicating or psychoactive as what Delta 9 is. So we're a little less worried about it that way. We still don't know much else about it as far as, what it is best for and everything too. Not quite as much as we know about, say, THCA. I think that's a better product for a lot of patients to work with. But for patients that really are concerned about that intoxicating effect but need more THC and THC effects, then the Delta 8 is a great option for them. The one big thing that I always say about our program and getting medication through the program is that it's tested. That third-party testing, is legit and been verified besides by the third-party testing facility, by the state and everybody else. So you can get Delta 8 on the internet. I've seen it myself, and I've looked at the third-party testing, and they legitimately have the exact same testing for 5 different products, yet the labeling on the packaging says different things as well. So, buyer beware. No different than your CBD products over the counter at this point. Make sure you do your research and source your products appropriately.
Cool. This is kind of like a 2-part question from 2 people. They ask you to elaborate a little bit about your counseling session. What does a typical counseling session look like? Someone at the dispensary and someone in your personal consulting business?
Very similar. Personally, it probably gets a little bit more in depth. We go a little bit more into, certain dosing and how to adjust dosing. In the dispensary, it's a little bit less just because I'm probably going to see them more often as they're coming in and out of the dispensary too. Right now with COVID, we're not doing anything person to person. We're doing all our consults over the phone and whatnot, but patients will still come in with questions. Our consultation includes everything. We go through a past medical history. What conditions do you have? What medications are you taking? What symptoms are you looking for relief of? What is your tolerance and history with cannabis? What other symptoms are you having issues with? Have you had any side effects to cannabis before, positive or negative? Even getting into, is there any schizophrenia in your family? For females, are you pregnant or breastfeeding? We really try to get into all the details and everything. We have all of their doctor information as well. But just sort of looking through that, it's very similar to a doctor's visit in a sense. We kind of use that as a bit of a guide to how we're going to assess the patient, what type of medications we think are appropriate based on their tolerance, their interest in certain delivery methods or not, and explain to them, what the differences are between hybrids, indicas, and sativas, what the different onsets and durations are to all of the different delivery methods, and how we can adjust dosing, and really give them an idea of where to start, what might be most appropriate. And a lot of it is a conversation, because it's well, what are you willing to use? I can make recommendations all day long, but at the end of the day, it's the patient who decides what product they're going home with. So I'm not trying to waste their time or my time or anything either. So the consultations can get interesting. You have some patients that have I've been smoking for longer than you've been alive. I know more about this stuff than you could ever dream of. Cool, man, no problem. What do you want? And a lot of times after maybe a month or so, they'll come back and they'll be like, all right, man, I've been in a haze for the past month. I don't know what's going on. My wife's yelling at me. I spent too much money. Let's do this the right way. So, the first consultation might not be all that in depth. It might be next to nothing, just walking them through an order because they're just not ready to have that conversation yet. So, it can change from person to person. If you have a patient that has completely cannabis naive, then that's going to be a little bit more in depth of a conversation. You're going to have to give a little bit more details. Um, with those patients, I try to get them to take notes. I have a notebook that I give them that, just gives them a place to keep some notes in that, they know they can always refer back to, because a lot of the times as you're going through the process of, adjusting dosing and which medications are appropriate, they don't really remember what was the most effective or not, because they've got so many different things going on. So to refer back to those notes can be really helpful for them. It can give them an idea. Oh, maybe I didn't really give that one a shot. I'll try and go back to it again. Or it helps them remember, no way, I had a horrible reaction to that one too. I don't want to do that ever again. But it's a fluid process with these patients. I want them to be coming in the beginning more often, and that's what I tell them. I want to really adjust that dosing and nail it down before we let you go home with a whole month's supply or something too. So that's the in-person ones at the dispensary. For my patients in private consultation, I have almost an identical intake form that I get from them, just to kind of get the same snapshot of what they have going on and everything. But we really drilled down more on not just symptoms, but how they want it to affect their overall well-being in their life. Because the goal isn't just to cure anything in this industry. It's to be a more active participant in your life. Well, it means something very different for every patient that you have. Some patients just want to be able to finish a trip to the grocery store. Other patients have kids and work and all these extracurricular activities that they need to go through as well. So it can be very different for patients that have very similar issues that they're dealing with in how we go about attacking that for them. So we really kind of drill down a little bit more. Like I said, because I don't get as much time with them consistently, I'll usually give them some more guidance, and we'll usually correspond via email a little bit more often as well. But one of the things that's really good and bad about the Connecticut program is, no matter what dispensary they go to, every producer has to offer the same exact products to each dispensary equally. So whatever products I have at my dispensary are the same products that are offered at yours. And even if they're not, I don't care. I've done consultations for patients in Maryland, in California, in Pennsylvania. I'll go to the website of the dispensary that they're going to use, and we can see what products are available there. So, if I'm helping somebody out of state, then, I'll say, listen, if you can let me know what dispensary is close to you, what you're going to use, I can go through their products and we can talk about, what might be most appropriate for you, and, what you want to use, how you want to use it, and really set up a regimen for them that way too.
Yeah, great answer, Brian. And this kind of touches on the community pharmacist aspect of what we do. I kind of compare this industry right now to how independent pharmacies thrived before, where on an equal platform, why do people keep coming back to your dispensary? And it's because of you at the end of the day. You can be dispensed medication anywhere, high THC, low THC, whatever it may be, but it's that advice and personal touch that you're looking for. So I'm glad you kind of touched on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how often, that's the stuff that keeps me in this, right? Like I just thinking about it, I got the goosebumps, man. I love that stuff. That's the stuff that's what changed my life in this industry. That's what made me just absolutely love this and want to know as much as humanly possible, because when you have those direct effect on your patients on levels that you could never have in an actual community pharmacy, because you literally see your patients coming from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane, or a cane to nothing, or they're coming back in with their their cancer markers not even showing up at all, or their Crohn's has been in remission for 9 months, where they only had 6 weeks at the most before, and they're high-fiving, and they're so appreciative for getting their life back, for being able to function within that again. And that's the stuff that you don't have that opportunity in retail pharmacy. You bust your butt to do the best you can for every single one of those patients, but it's so much of your time is spent arguing with insurance companies and doctors about what's covered and what isn't and why, and why it's taking so long and costs so much. And so it's, you really get that personal touch with every single one of the patients, and they appreciate it so much, man. And that there's nothing better, nothing more rewarding than when they're just so grateful for, giving them what little you try to give them.
Agreed. So another question about drug interactions. Pharmacists are constantly looking for resources on how to identify drug cannabis interactions. I'm not aware of any kind of POS system or medical record system that actually highlights drug interactions, but how do you keep track of it for your patients?
Medscape, honestly, is probably our best resource that we have for that. When it comes to CBD, you just look up Epidiolex, and that's going to give you all the information that you could ever want with the drug interactions with CBD, which there are a few. That's the one that to me is most concerning, because you don't know. You can see when Connecticut, one of the things that's very interesting is our PMP system is our prescription monitoring program. Because in Connecticut, they descheduled cannabis to a Schedule II, it actually shows up on the prescription monitoring program. So when a pharmacist goes in to fill, let's say their oxycodone or their Xanax or whatever, and they check the prescription monitoring program to see if they filled any other controls recently, they'll see if they filled, their medical marijuana or picked up, because their medical cannabis will show up in the PMP. So the doctors can see it, the pharmacists can see it, and they're like, oh, I see you're using marijuana, and they may try to, talk to them about a potential interaction. But if you're just using CBD that you're purchasing over the counter or online or what have you, there's potential for interactions with medications there that nobody has any idea about, no different than taking, aspirin for patients that, are having issues with their blood thinners or something like that. CBD can definitely have those effects. THC, that becomes a little bit more difficult to find really good resources. The Medscape does have some pretty good information. They source it pretty decently. Outside of that, there's not a lot. It's really a little bit more kind of commonsensical, I guess, if that makes any sense. Just, it's going to increase your sedation levels for your Xanax and benzos and stuff. And it has been shown to make opiates more effective as well. So, increasing potential side effects there. Those are the kind of things I would be most concerned about. Patients that are more lightheaded, dizzy, drowsy than they may normally be. Outside of that, there's not a lot of real interactions. Again, it's your CBD that they have a little bit more information about, because that's affecting your CYP, enzymes and everything too, which, that can turn into a whole different discussion as well. From your common medications right now, the biggest ones that I would tell patients to be aware of, some of your anti-seizure medications, your Onfi, your Keppra, she's trying to think now, what were some of the other ones too?
Valproic acid.
Yeah, yep. The Depakote is another one too that has a few. Those are ones that we see a little bit more significant, and a lot of times that's because that dosing changes so regularly too, because the patients are not well controlled. So it's less about the interaction and more about being a little bit more attentive to the patient and the patient's needs, because that can be so fluid of a situation for them that, as long as the clinicians are aware that they're using cannabis, then they should be able to make those adjustments, because it's no different than what they're seeing. They should still be treating based on what they're seeing. And, I would hope the patients are being honest that, they're using cannabis and trying to sort of supplement with cannabis as well, but it can definitely help patients get more control.
Yeah. Next question was from Ben about potency of products. That's a definite yes. We see flower products that are testing above, 15% to, mid 30s. In New Jersey, we have one strain that tested at 36% THCA. So yes, potency has been increasing, and the manufactured products, some of the vape cartridges are up to 99% THC. So that's a definitive yes. From Colleen, what are some other primary resources that you reference on a daily basis?
Some of the ones that I like, healer.com is great. United Patients Group is a really good one. Medicaljane.com has a lot of good information. Some of the other stuff, I actually like some of the testing labs. Steep Hill has some good information. I believe it's just steephill.com. And SC Labs had some pretty good information as well. I think Proverde was one of the other ones. That's getting a little bit more into your different cannabinoids and terpenes and stuff like that too, if you're looking for very specific but kind of basic information. And honestly, some silly sources, but Leafly has some really great basic information stuff. They have some good basic videos and stuff that you can watch. I mean, no lie, when I first started, I was so, pardon the pun, green to everything. I really watched this Leafly series. They had a 101 Cannabis 101 series, and it just taught you about like concentrates and flower and all these different extracts and stuff too, that once you get comfortable with some of the language and what products actually are, then it becomes much easier to understand. But it's a very different industry, so it's harder to understand if you don't really put the time in. And because there's not a lot of good educational sources like this one out there that have people talking about it and knowing what they're doing, it's hard to find. Trying to think of some other good ones. I'm totally hitting a wall right now. I apologize. Any others you can think of?
I have a lot of books, and
Yeah.
I know that books aren't necessarily primary resources, but at the same time, they do reference the resources where they find the information from. I'm currently reading The Cannabis Prescription by Colleen Higgins. I think it's pretty thorough. It's a very basic underlying cannabinoids, but there's a bunch.
Yeah, there are quite a few. And what is it? Cannabis Pharmacy by Dr. Michael Backus is, one of the original really good ones too. There's a few other books that I have that I'll constantly refer to, and they give a lot of, I like the ones that keep it a little bit more basic, just because the information changes so consistently and so just constantly that, to try to put just facts out there in a book is hard. By the time it's published, everything has changed from what we knew before. So that's one of the reasons that I really do like a lot of the online sources. But always look, because what we knew was 100% true yesterday is completely different tomorrow. This industry is changing so quickly. The science is happening at lightning speed as we speak. So it's hard to give any definitive answers on anything, really.
Yeah. All right, a couple rapid fire questions. John is asking, have you ever had a patient who had hyperemesis syndrome?
Not a lot. A couple have talked about having the issue. It's not something that we've had overly significantly. Some of the patients that we have are very heavy users, but it's been pretty infrequent, actually.
Yeah, I can tell you in the 2 years that I've been working, I haven't come across a single case.
Yeah, I think there was one person that had it twice, and they were a very heavy user.
Yeah. Okay, so back to our conversation. Given the keys to the kingdom, as they say, how would you change the nomenclature system, not just in Connecticut, but if we needed to establish a basic, system that all states can implement? How would you go about that?
Oh, geez. That's a hard one, just because so many of these strains have been named, and that's just how they're known at this point. When they did it here, they started, some used colors, some used completely random names. I kind of like the completely random word name type of thing, but I sort of like some of the ones I was showing you from CT Pharma, like for instance, the Arachnidex, which sort of refers to the spider, but it's a white widow strain, something along those lines, maybe to get, so we could still reference the original genetics of it, but something a little bit more professional, something a little bit easier that, we don't have to have people asking for cat piss or something along those lines. But that would be a great group discussion, man. I think we could have quite a spirited conversation, but I think we could really come up with some great ideas for that. Because, I think you and I had talked previously too, that, a white widow here on the East Coast versus a white widow grown, in Humboldt County or in Portland or whatever, they're completely different phenotypes, even if they're grown inside and everything too. So there would have to be something more to the actual genetics themselves and having them tested to have, a certain name be within a certain margin kind of a thing. But there's definitely an opening for that to happen. And I think it would be more appropriate to have maybe regional names or something like that too. But I think as everything opens up, it's going to be very similar to your beer industry. You're going to have your Budweiser type of people that are going to be distributing all across the country. You're going to have your Sam Adams that are, more of a national craft brew. And then you'll have all your local craft brews as well that are not really getting out nationally unless somebody ships it to you, you order it special or something. So, I think that's going to have a lot to do with how things get named and are treated as well.
Cool. And we had also talked a little bit about this, but for our viewers that are interested in starting their own private consultation business, can you run us through some of the like liability insurances that you may carry?
Yeah, the liability was number one thing that I grabbed, just because, it's, as a pharmacist, you can make recommendations as well. When it comes to cannabis, the one big sort of pillow you have to fall on is that nobody's ever overdosed on it. So, you have a little less worry there than you may in your typical pharmacy, but you really want to carry liability coverage because we know how sue happy everybody can be. Now, having said that, that can be a little bit tricky. I had carried it for about 3 years consistently with one company. The company got bought out by somebody else, and they didn't want to have anything to do with the cannabis industry at all, even though I was one guy that didn't touch the plant or anything like that, so they still had a problem with it. And, I had to go through another company, and I am now paying about double what I was paying before because they knew what I was doing. So it's a situation where, you have to be careful with that. I had a bank account closed on me through Chase, even though I was completely transparent with everything that I was doing. They opened up the account, gave me all my information. I was up and running for about 90 days before I get a letter in the mail just telling me, sorry, we're going to close your account. No phone call, no nothing. You have 30 days to get your money out, and that's it. We don't want your business anymore. And I was like, but you said it was okay. I told you I wasn't touching the plant. I'm only, speaking to patients. That's it. And this wasn't an issue. And they had a problem with it. So, when I opened my bank account the next time, I'm a pharmacist and I do private consulting. It's that simple. You just have to be very particular about the language that you use. That's unfortunately a big part of it, and that's really kind of, when I renew my liability insurance again, that's where I'll go with it, because I'm not paying that amount again. It becomes very difficult to sustain. But those are probably two of the biggest hurdles that I've run into with it. Outside of that, man, everybody just wants to know more information. And wherever you go, like I joined the Chamber of Commerce in a couple of different towns actually, and that was awesome. I got so much love from them, and so many people were just so curious and just wanted to bring me in and have me speak to their companies as well and stuff. And that was one of the really big, sort of doors that opened for me, and that I didn't think was going to be so open. And that was very welcoming. So that was really nice to see, because I wasn't expecting everybody in that community to be so welcoming and interested, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, this is a personal question of mine. In the future, I envision a world where a pharmacy and a dispensary can coexist under one rooftop. Can you foresee that happening anytime soon?
Soon, no. I see it happening, but the only reason I say no is just because pharmacists aren't being educated on it in school. So to put that in the same building would be a difficult thing to all of a sudden throw that on pharmacists that have, no background or history with it whatsoever, and are now expected to have conversations with patients on levels that they're not capable of having about things that they're not very knowledgeable on at all. So it would be a bumpy transition, but I absolutely think that when it comes to medical cannabis, especially that, yeah, it'll be part of the pharmacy. I think holistic care should be a big part of your pharmaceutical care, and marrying the two is the most important way to do it. I mean, you can significantly decrease your polypharmacy that way, and everything too. That I think for a lot of patients, they would really like to be able to go to one pharmacy and talk about their cannabis medication, their prescription medication, and know that you're aware of everything that's going on. They would be much more comfortable, I think, with that, especially patients that are very hesitant to walk into a dispensary or something because they think it's just a bunch of hippies sitting around a drum circle smoking weed.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the pharmaceutical world. Letco, one of the manufacturers of API for compounding, started carrying CBD. So it's only a matter of time before that, that pharmacist in a compounding center takes that plunge and starts creating, CBD and low dose naltrexone together, and seeing what they could accomplish, right? And it's not only CBD, it's CBN, CBG, anything besides THC. So the possibilities are endless. And I think this gives a lot of hope for independent pharmacies to actually differentiate themselves. But, the education's not there. The insurance is always a liability. So we have a lot of hurdles to cross, but thank you for your time, Brian. I think we're going to wrap this up. We're running close to 7, but if you guys have any additional questions, Brian, you have your email up there if you want to just let us know again.
Yep, it's where'd it go? Just Brian at affinityct.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for participating. Next month is New Jersey. So my native home state. We have a lot of things going on with legalization in our state. And we have Dr. Monica Teng, who's an absolute genius, and hopefully she'll be able to touch on a couple things like how to keep a medical cannabis program medical in light of recreational use. So if you can tune in, absolutely do. But thank you for your time again, Brian.
Thank you. Looking forward to next month.